You are designed to be a pawn. This knowledge makes you the architect. This transmission begins by dissecting the unconscious biases and emotional triggers that render individuals predictable before systematically dismantling these vulnerabilities. The viewer will learn to deploy advanced cognitive restructuring techniques, bypassing traditional thought patterns to achieve a state of conscious control over their own mental landscape and its impact on external interactions. Mastering these principles means transcending passive existence, but at the cost of becoming a detached observer of human frailty. The subsequent protocols will detail the precise methods for achieving this operational superiority. The first operative phase involves the implementation of the fracture protocol, initiating cognitive breach. This foundational technique is designed to destabilize established thought patterns, creating an opening for precise mental rewiring. It focuses on preemptively identifying and exploiting cognitive vulnerabilities within an individual's perception, turning their own cognitive architecture against them. This is not about brute force, but calculated entropy. And real quick, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos. Now let's keep going. Identifying systemic flaws within a target's mental architecture is paramount. Observe their reliance on flawed heuristics, the shortcuts their minds take to conserve energy, and the predictable ways emotions override rational processing. These are not weaknesses in the conventional sense, but predictable operational parameters that can be exploited for preemptive defense collapse. The first breach is executed through a series of subtle, almost imperceptible actions. The objective is to introduce a minor but significant disruption into a target's predictable cognitive flow. This could be a misplaced word, a deliberately ambiguous statement, or an unexpected behavioral deviation. The goal is to create a flicker of dissonance, a micro-pause in their internal processing. Cataloging the responses to this initial breach is critical. Observe the immediate psychological and behavioral reactions. Note the subtle shifts in body language, the momentary confusion, or the subtle adjustments they make to reassert their perceived reality. Each reaction becomes a data point, a refinement for subsequent operations. This initial disruption weakens the target's natural psychological defenses before they are fully aware of an attack. By subtly fracturing their established patterns, you create a state of heightened receptivity to external influence. Preemptive defense collapse ensures that when the more potent tactics are deployed, the target is already compromised and less capable of mounting a robust resistance. This foundation prepares the ground for the strategic application of weaponized silence. Weaponized silence, the art of absence. This section explores the strategic use of silence not as a void, but as an active, imposing force. It details how intentional withholding of communication can manipulate perception, amplify anxiety, and exert control. Silence in this context is not passive. It is a deliberate instrumentalization of the void. The pressure of the void is a palpable force. The absence of expected input creates psychological pressure, compelling the target to fill the void with their own anxieties, assumptions, and worst-case scenarios. This internal narrative construction, unchecked by external data, becomes a potent weapon against them, amplifying their insecurities. Silence can be employed as a potent form of psychological punishment, signaling disapproval or rejection without explicit condemnation. This deliberate withholding of communication conveys a potent, unspoken message, forcing the target to interpret the silence through the lens of their own insecurities, thereby self-punishing and fostering a desire for appeasement. Exploring how the strategic removal of communicative noise can make subtle nonverbal cues or perceived slights appear amplified and significant is crucial. When the usual chatter ceases, even the smallest inflection or averted gaze takes on exaggerated weight, becoming a focal point for intense scrutiny and overthinking. The echo chamber of unanswered questions is where the target's fears and assumptions fester and grow unchecked. Each unanswered communication creates a loop, amplifying their internal monologue of doubt and fear, making them increasingly malleable and susceptible to suggestion as they desperately seek resolution. This mastery of absence naturally leads to the overwhelming of cognitive functions. Cognitive overload, flooding the system. This section details the technique of overwhelming an individual's processing capacity, leading to decision paralysis and increased susceptibility to external direction. It's about drowning critical thought in a deluge of stimuli, rendering them incapable of independent assessment. Information saturation is the primary mechanism here. Bombard a target with excessive, often conflicting, information to erode their ability to discern relevance or truth. This deluge of data serves to saturate their working memory, making it impossible to process, prioritize, or verify incoming stimuli effectively. The rapid introduction of novel and contradictory inputs serves to destabilize established decision-making frameworks. When presented with an insurmountable volume of data, the target's cognitive resources are depleted, forcing them into a state of analysis paralysis. This leaves them vulnerable to simplistic directives or predigested conclusions. By intentionally creating a high-stakes, rapid-fire environment, you force the target to abandon thorough analysis in favor of immediate, often superficial, responses. The pressure of time and complexity erodes their capacity for critical evaluation, making them prone to accepting the path of least resistance, which is precisely what you will offer. This state of overwhelm prepares them for the direct implantation of directives. The deliberate confusion introduced by conflicting information streams prevents the formation of a coherent mental model. This cognitive disorientation makes the target excessively reliant on external validation or clear, albeit artificial, directives. They cease to trust their own judgment, becoming a fertile ground for programmed responses and external control. This leads directly to the manipulation of perception through fabricated realities. Fabricated realities, engineering perceptual truths. This section details how to construct alternative narratives or subtly distort existing ones to alter a target's perception of events and individuals. It is about controlling the context in which information is received, thereby dictating its interpretation. The construction of alternative narratives involves the careful selection and arrangement of facts, coupled with the strategic omission of inconvenient truths. This process creates a plausible, yet ultimately manipulated, version of reality that the target can readily accept, especially when their cognitive faculties are already compromised. Subtly distorting existing narratives requires meticulous attention to detail. Small alterations in emphasis, selective memory recall, or the introduction of speculative framing can gradually shift the target's understanding of past events or current circumstances without raising immediate alarm. Perception is a malleable construct. Controlling the context of information reception is paramount. By dictating when, where, and how a target encounters specific data, you can preemptively shape their interpretation. This involves managing their information channels and framing every piece of data within your predetermined framework, ensuring it aligns with your desired outcome. The goal is to engineer a state where the target's truth is no longer an objective discovery, but a manufactured product. This manufactured truth becomes the foundation of their beliefs and decisions, making them predictable and controllable. This controlled reality then allows for the precise deployment of emotional leverage. Emotional leverage, exploiting psychological fault lines. This section details the process of identifying and exploiting an individual's deepest fears, insecurities, and unmet desires to create powerful emotional leverage. It is about understanding the primal drivers that motivate human behavior. Identifying psychological fault lines involves meticulous observation and analysis of a target's behaviors, reactions, and expressed vulnerabilities. Look for patterns of insecurity, areas of persistent anxiety, or deeply held unmet desires. These are the emotional pressure points that can be strategically manipulated. Exploiting these fault lines is not about causing pain for its own sake, but about creating a dependency. By subtly addressing or amplifying these core needs and fears, you can position yourself as the sole source of relief or validation, thereby gaining significant influence over their emotional state and subsequent actions. Unmet desires, whether for recognition, security, or belonging, represent powerful levers. By offering the promise of fulfillment or by highlighting the perceived threat to their existing stability, you can generate a powerful emotional response that bypasses rational thought and compels them to seek your guidance or intervention. Fears, conversely, are equally potent motivators. The apprehension of loss, failure, or abandonment can be amplified to create a desperate need for protection or reassurance. This creates a situation where the target is willing to concede control in exchange for the perceived safety you can offer, making them highly susceptible to further manipulation. This emotional manipulation primes them for the final stage of compliance. Compliance protocols, securing behavioral alignment. This section details the final stage of the process, translating manufactured perceptions and exploited emotions into concrete, predictable behaviors. It outlines the methods for ensuring the target acts in accordance with the architect's objectives. Securing behavioral alignment involves a clear and unambiguous directive, presented when the target is most receptive and psychologically primed. This directive should be framed as the logical or even inevitable next step, often aligning with their newly constructed reality and their deepest emotional needs or fears. Translating perception into action requires reinforcing the fabricated reality through consistent messaging and subtle nudges. Any deviation from the desired behavior must be immediately addressed, either by re-emphasizing the manufactured truth or by subtly reactivating the exploited emotional levers to steer them back on course. The process is made concrete through the use of pre-planned rewards and consequences, however subtle. Positive reinforcement for desired actions and the implied threat of negative outcomes for non-compliance solidify the behavioral pattern, making it increasingly automatic and less reliant on conscious decision-making. Ultimately, compliance protocols are about habituation. By consistently guiding the target's actions through engineered perceptions and emotional manipulation, you create a new behavioral baseline. This established pattern of predictable responses ensures sustained control, making the individual a reliable asset or a neutralized obstacle in your strategic operations. This concludes the initial briefing on operational psychology. Make sure to subscribe for more videos and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. We'll see you in the next one.